好吃。
In China, more and more people don't want children anymore. So why do I have two kids? Hello everyone. I'm Jinhao. This is a small mountain village in inland China. I grew up here with my grandmother. I had a very happy childhood here. I was born in the 1990s. At that time, China had just started opening up to the world. But inland China was still very poor. When I was little, we ate sweet potatoes almost every day. Honestly, I love sweet potatoes. They taste really good. But if you eat them for many years in a row, you may start wanting something else. My parents were farmers their entire lives. When they got married, even my father's pants were borrowed from his older brother. In China, people often say that poverty can destroy a marriage. That sentence felt like a curse. My parents argued almost their entire lives. That affected me deeply. So after growing up, my strongest belief was this: I would never get married. And I would never have children. In my second year of university, I told my family about this decision. Everyone laughed at me. Only my grandmother took it seriously. She called me a fool. She said, "How can a person live completely alone?" My grandmother was a very traditional person. Many people think traditional Chinese parents are strict. But my grandmother was actually very lovely. That's why, even though I grew up poor, I still had a happy childhood. After university, I moved to a big city for work. At that time, China's housing prices were rising very quickly. That only strengthened my decision not to marry. Because in China, buying a house is deeply connected to marriage. Without a house, people feel you are not ready to start a family. But fortunately, 2 years later, I met a girl who was willing to marry me, even though I didn't own a house. My grandmother was right. People cannot truly love loneliness. I'm not a special person. I'm just an ordinary man. After that, everything happened naturally. We fell in love. We rented a small apartment. We got married. And then we had our first child. Honestly, even now, it still feels a little unreal to me. Before meeting my wife, I truly believed I would spend my whole life alone. Actually, I'm a very ordinary person. I don't have big ambitions. I don't have a unique personality. Like most people, I simply wanted a warm home. And someone beside me when I felt lonely. But life is never that simple. After getting married, I became anxious very often. I didn't have much money. Work was exhausting. The children needed constant care. Sometimes I started doubting myself. Very quickly. My daughter turned 1 year old. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I quit my job. And I left the city to return to the countryside. You might think I was a little crazy. Ha. Maybe I was. But life is short. Sometimes you just have to follow your feelings. Even if it doesn't seem rational. After returning to the countryside, my anxiety really became lighter. The rivers, the hills, the forests, the grass fields. All of these places feel familiar to me. Every place holds a memory. For example, I still remember one evening from my childhood. The sun was slowly setting. I sat by the water, quietly staring at the surface. Before I realized it, the sky had already turned completely dark. Even after 20 years, I still remember that moment very clearly. My wife also grew up in the countryside. Whenever I talked about these memories, she always listened very carefully. So when I said I wanted a second child, she agreed immediately. Both of us grew up with brothers or sisters. So we worried that one day, our daughter might feel lonely. Honestly, marriage brought many new experiences into my life. But it also brought many new worries. Even now, I still feel anxious sometimes. I still doubt myself. The only difference is this. I've learned to accept these feelings. So today, I'm not here to tell people they should have children. I just wanted to honestly share my own experience. Marriage didn't solve all my problems. But it also wasn't as frightening as I imagined when I was young.